Hi, this is Beth Pittman here, and I wanted to give you an update on my project about studying and understanding teachers' choices to use technology. I know I've shared a lot with you this semester about my research ideas and what I'm working on in designing, so this is just an update of where I am. My project is very much still in the works, and so this is just an update. So, as I mentioned before, what brought me to this interest is that there is a mixed story in our field and how we study how teachers use technology. And so often studies focus on teacher pedagogical beliefs and how those pedagogical beliefs are espoused in the use of technology. We also study those pedagogical beliefs in the terms that constructivist uses of technology or constructivist pedagogical beliefs are somewhat of the ideal or will produce higher level uses of technology. And through our study of technology use this way, we have kind of a mixed story. We have some studies that say if teachers say that they have constructivist beliefs, that they do use technology in those constructivist ways. But then we also have other studies that say that teachers say they believe in constructivist beliefs, but then do not use technology in those ways. And so what actually kind of brought me to this question is even through my own practice as a teacher, I have found that I believe that I am a constructivist teacher. I believe in constructivist practices, but I often use technology in low-level ways. So if a researcher had studied me, I would have been one of those teachers that said that they believed have had constructivist beliefs, but then espoused low-level uses of technology. And so I started to then question where that mixed story then developed. I'm approaching my research through a critical theory lens as an advocate for the teacher, so that we understand where the teacher is situated in this research, as rather not being something that we're looking upon on the teacher and trying to force something onto them, but rather what is happening inside of their world and where is their power in this choice and why are they making this choice, so that then as researchers we can then understand how to better support their choices within their classroom. So that's what kind of led me to this interest. With all of that said, what does this mean to me right now? When I first started this class, my goal was to design a pilot Q-sort study, and I'm still there. I'm still working on that, and I'm hoping in the next 3 or 4 days that I will have a Q-sort that I can pilot with a small group of teachers in my environment at the Georgia Cyber Academy. And I'm planning to produce a research report that includes the rationale for using Q methodology along with some initial analysis of some data I collected. All that being said, this was kind of a big plan at the beginning of the semester. And as I dove into my question, I've had to understand more about what I wanted to know. First of all, to decide whether Q-sort was actually the methodology that I want to use. And I'm honestly still at a place of trying to understand if Q-sort is exactly right. I still feel in my gut it is, but I'm not sure. And so through all of this conversation, I've kind of created this model, and I shared this in class very quickly the other day, but this model has been really, really pivotal to me this semester. So even though I had set out to design a Q-sort, I think I worked really hard in designing a model for my thinking that has really come through several iterations and is probably still going to see another iteration before the semester's over. So my model really is grounded in phenomenology, particularly the idea of an emerging phenomenon. And the idea that when a phenomenon emerges, that it's not as predictive, and that different things can affect that phenomenon and how they interact with each other affects that phenomenon. And so in my model, you can see these gray areas, and I'm suggesting that those gray areas would change depending on the situation at any given moment that a teacher would face, okay? And that moment can be in action or pre-action or even post-action. So for example, if they plan an activity with technology pre, this model is going to look different than if something's happening in the moment, they might choose something different, and that creates a different action. And then even post, how that all works together to create this kind of what I like to call bubbling, where things are interacting in this gray. In my model, you can see that I have different things that are coming in that cause this bubbling to change or affect, create this bubbling that then creates the action or the choice that the teacher makes. Then once the choice the teacher makes, that creates an outcome. That outcome goes into the teacher's context again, and then all of these things interact again and go back into the model. So it's always a soup of things that not necessarily that you can isolate one moment and say, if I gave teacher access, then teacher would do well with technology. If I change teacher belief, then teacher will do well with technology. If I make teacher feel more confident, she'll do better with technology. And in those small isolated things, yes, might address one issue, but it's not addressing how all of these things are coming together. And so I'm really interested in this idea of dispositions. So how does this emerging phenomenon interact with the teacher's dispositions? How does it change their dispositions? Does one disposition become more prominent at another time when all of these exterior things are happening at the same time? And how does that outcome then interact again with all of these things that are going on inside the cultural, the socio-cultural, outside of the phenomenon, then go into the dispositions, make those bubble up, and create a new action. And so it's ongoing constantly. Because of the fluid nature of this model that I am playing with, I still feel like Q methodology is a really great way of identifying that, because it identifies perspective. Perspective, or the perspective or the viewpoint at that moment. But then developing the right Q sort, which has been a very difficult situation, or the Q sort statements has been difficult, because I want to be able to capture all of these things that are going on that are very difficult to predict. So where does that leave me now? So now I have, as I shared with you guys, and you gave me a lot of really strong feedback, which was wonderful last week in class. I'm currently working on editing my Q-sort statements to, as I even have this highlighted here, is to try to make them not necessarily neutral, but not as so one-sided or the other. I'm also playing with the words because I have, they're not parallel in structure, and you guys pointed that out, and I feel like that was difficult in answering the questions that I'm trying to look for. I think that my Q-sort statements were in the ballpark. They're just not exactly right yet. And so I'm working on grounding those back into disposition surveys, and also editing them so that in hopes I can have this out for my colleagues to Q-sort by the next week, so that I can have a little bit of data to write about. Lloyd's Q-sorting tool has been a wonderful addition for me to be able to work with and understand the methodology and get a better grip on what I want to do. So that's where I'm at. I would appreciate any feedback you guys have, particularly about my model. I'm not sure I'm doing a grand job of explaining it at this point, maybe because I'm still trying to understand it myself. But I hope that you guys can give me a little bit of feedback on what your thoughts are there, and thank you again.